I'm super excited to have you guys here. We're going to talk about how to actually have your DNA work for you. So we're all born with genes, and we inherit our genes from our mom and from our dad, and that's great. And sometimes we can think that we got dealt a bad hand, that we are betrayed by our genes. And what I'm here to show you tonight is that while you keep your genes all of your life, you cannot change your genes. You can actually change your genetic expression. So you can have amazing energy, a vibrant health, and really make it easier for you to reach your health goals. So we're going to be using the power of epigenetics to make your genes work for you. And we're going to talk about what that means. What's genetics? What's epigenetics? What does this all mean? So let's go ahead and get started. So why I love genetics is because it's really a really cool thing. When you think about it, this is myself, my husband, Jeff, and our son, Paxton. And what's really cool is you can take two different human beings and then you can mash their genetics together and you come out with a brand new human being, which is Paxton. He has a little qualities from both me and my husband. And it's just so neat to see that. And anyone who has kids, like, you have done genetic experiments, like you have your own little gift of modern genetics. And I personally had a lot of issues with infertility, a lot of health problems. I didn't think I was going to ever be able to be a mom. I was told by doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, that this would not be an opportunity for me. And so to be able to actually pass on some of my own genetics and blend them with my husband, who I love, and having that gift of Paxton is just so amazing. So for those of you who don't know much about me, I'm Dr. Michelle Sands. I'm a naturopathic physician certified in functional medicine. I have advanced postgraduate certifications in anti-aging, hormone therapy, and longevity. And I'm also an epigenetics coach and a mentor. So that's where I'm at now, but I wasn't always there. I suffered from a very young age, from pre-puberty. Around age 8, I started having health issues. I had digestive issues, IBS. Later on, I had period problems. I had problems with infertility, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I had anxiety, acne. I had food sensitivities, so I had a very limited diet of what I can eat. I found out I had parasites, and I just dealt with incredible fatigue, joint pain, Epstein-Barr virus, mold toxicity, heavy metal toxicity. I had a long list of issues that I was struggling with, and that kind of led me down this path. And there was a time in my life when I only knew about conventional medicine. And I was told by doctor after doctor that there was nothing I can do, that, having a child wasn't in the cards for me. And I really felt like I grew up in a family with bad genes. My mother's side of the family had a lot of mental health issues. My dad's side of the family had a lot of obesity and diabetes, cancer, other health issues. And all of my cousins and even my brother, they all had a lot of health issues. They all were pretty unhealthy and had a lot of chronic pain. And so I thought that was just where I was going to go. That was what my life was supposed to be. And that is the story that I hear from a lot of my clients. And so I'm really passionate about this topic because it really does open the door and really shine a light on what makes you, why maybe the diet that your best friend is doing or the medication that your sister's taking, why maybe that's not going to work for you, and you can find out what will. And so I've helped thousands of women, including myself, to balance their hormones and to leverage their genetics for optimal wellness. And when I say leverage your genetics, I take what you have, take what your mama gave you, right? Take what you have and make that work for you. Like, actually use what you have to make something better. And that's really what we're talking about today. So that's just a little about me. So today, I just really want you to be present, try to get some focus. I'm going to break this down to make it super simple. But if you walk away, if you're doing something else, if you're on your cell phone, you might miss something that's super important. And I really want you to grasp this concept, because once you do, it is very empowering. So just go ahead and close other windows, put your computer, I should put my phone on vibrate. So let me do that just so that we're not distracted, because what we're going to do next is super cool. So before we get into what is epigenetics, science, and all of that stuff, I really want to share with you how you can get an instant genetic shift. You could actually impact so many of your own genes by just the simple act of breathing. So we can change our own genetic expression by incorporating what's called the relaxation response. So there's a Harvard researcher, his name was Herbert Benson, and he coined the term the relaxation response back in 1975. And his research showed that just short periods of meditation, such as using breathing exercises to focus, that can actually alter your body's response to stress. And this could invoke our relaxation response. We naturally know how to invoke our stress response, right? We have a stress, our heart rate goes up, we get stressed out, and that our body physiology changes. But if you do the opposite, if you could be proactive and use some deep breathing, you can actually use the mind to change the body by focusing on our breath. And that in turn can change the way our genes express. In fact, there's actually a study that was published in 2013 in the journal PLOS ONE, which is a very famous medical journal. And there was a study that took place at the Mind Body Institute of Massachusetts. And they had a group of healthy adults that had no experience in meditation, breathing exercises, mindfulness, and they took them through an 8-week relaxation response training course. And in that course, they did 20 minutes a day where they follow the CD that had took them through some mindfulness and relaxation exercises. And what they did during that 8 weeks, before every session, they did a blood test, and after every session, they did a blood test. So this is a really controlled study. And what they found at the end of the 8 weeks is that the deep breathing and the relaxation exercises actually impacted more than 22,000 genes at different points in the process. So that is amazing. 22,000 genes were impacted just by doing mindfulness-based activities. And so let's do that right now. Let's actually impact our own genes. So we're just going to do a very simple breathing exercise together. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sit up tall. If you're sitting in a chair, just make sure your feet are on the ground, and just going to roll your shoulders back and inhale deeply through your nose. We're going to inhale deeply through our nose for a count of 4. We're going to hold that breath for a count of 4. And then we're going to exhale through our mouth slowly for a count of 4. And then we're going to hold the exhale out for a count of 4. So again, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4 through our nose, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to count you out. I say we're going to do it together, but I'm going to be counting, so I'm not actually going to be doing the breathing. So we're going to do it 2 times together. At the end of that, you're going to have a change in your genetic expression. So let's do that together. Ready? Okay, so get ready. We're going to take a deep breath in through our nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4. Hold the exhale. 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're gonna do that one more time. Inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Okay, you can resume your normal breathing now, but congratulations. You just positively impacted thousands of genes just by showing up tonight. I bet you didn't know you were going to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to give you that little tool that you can use anytime to positively impact how your genes express. So we're just breathing in peace and exhaling stress. That's what we're doing today. All right, so let's actually talk about genes. Now, I'm not talking about the genes that you wear, but just as we can see, there's so many different styles and shapes and colors and patterns of genes. There's so many different genes that make us all different. So genes are amazing because they keep everybody unique. So the Human Genome Project, this is what revolutionized genetic research. And scientists wanted to understand the contents of our body's instruction manual. And they did this by reading our gene instructions. And this was started early, like back in the 1950s, and it was completed in 2003, actually in April. So April 25th is a DNA Day. It's National DNA Day, and that's to celebrate the completion of the Human Genome Project. They identified all the genes that make up the genome, not all of them at that point, but we're still discovering more. But it really allowed us to study the molecular basis of health and disease and really how genes impact our health and disease. So they used to think, however, when they started this in the 1950s, they thought that once they sequenced the genome, they would be able to end all disease. However, they didn't account for epigenetics and how every bite we take, every move we make, every thought we have, every breath we breathe has an impact on how our genes express. So it's not just about having the right genes, it's about using them correctly. So that's really what we're going to be talking about here tonight. So to understand how we are the same and how we're different, we have to think about humans as a species. We're a relatively young species, which means that we haven't really had much time in genetics, in science speak, to evolve and produce too many variations. So thanks to the Human Genome Project, we know that each of us have approximately 3 billion base pairs of DNA. So it's 3 billion pairs of DNA. And no two people, except for identical twins, are exactly alike. We all have a little bit of variation. Any two people can have about 10 million base pairs that are different. So that's a lot. It's about 0.1% of our entire genome is different, but the rest of us is the same. So around the world, all humans, even though we look different, we might have different color skin, different color eyes, we would be taller, shorter. We are essentially the same except for 0.1%. That makes us individuals, which is cool too. So it's really neat to think that we are all similar yet different. And those differences are really where the personalized medicine comes in. And so genes are actually at the root of functional medicine. So if you're interested in functional medicine, if you're seeing a functional medicine practitioner, you'll see this is actually the IFM, Institute of Functional Medicine, diagram of the functional medicine tree. And so the leaves are all your symptoms, and the branches and the leaves are your signs and symptoms. The trunk of the tree, this is all your systems of your body, like your hormone system, your detoxification system. And then at the root is your experiences, your lifestyle, and your genetic predispositions. So genetics are super important for personalizing an approach to healing. Okay, so like I mentioned before, it's really important to know that everything you need to heal, grow, and thrive can be found in nature, the universe, and within yourself. And the key to healthy living is to remove all the blocking factors to healing and allow your body to do what it already knows how to do. Your healing, your ability to heal has been there all along. And many doctors don't teach you this. They don't want to really explain this to you, because healing is actually very natural and it doesn't really require medications or surgery. Every cell in our body was born with the knowledge to heal. So our cells are smart. They know how to be in balance. They know how to heal. And really what we need to do is remove the things that are getting in their way, blocking them per se. And that's really what's at the basis of naturopathic medicine. And so when we combine using the power of nature with leveraging your genetics, then we have personalized, powerful medicine that's really accessible to all of you. So one thing that we need to know is that the old way of thinking, like back in the days of the Human Genome Project, we used to think that if you inherited some traits or you inherited some genetics from your mom or your dad or grandfather, that was your destiny. So a lot of times, even today, we see our clients coming into our practice and they're being put on statins or they're being put on metformin because they have a family history of diabetes or a family history of high cholesterol, even though they themselves don't have that yet. So those doctors who are prescribing those medications based on family history are really using that old school way of thinking that your genes are they're set in stone and that's what's going to happen to you just because you inherit something. And the new way of thinking is that your DNA is not your destiny. We now know that our DNA is the foundation, it's the blueprint, but that blueprint does not define our destiny. It's like a song, right? You have a song that has lyrics and they can be performed by one artist and sound one way, or it can be performed by a different artist and sound completely different. Excuse me, depending on who is singing. So your DNA is just the foundation, it's just the lyrics of the song, and then who sings it and how it's performed, how it actually expresses, that is up to you. That's up to your lifestyle. And so the same is true for a recipe, right? You can have a bunch of ingredients and you can put them together in a certain way and you can get one thing, or you can put them together differently. You can get something totally different. So just some foundational principles to really drill down that we have our genetic predisposition, which is our DNA. So our DNA says you have potential for possibly developing diabetes because you have these genes that will interact differently with the food that you eat. But then you have your environmental factors, how you're living your life. Are you under stress? Are you sleeping? What foods you're eating? How much exercise you're doing? All of those things can impact your blood sugar as well. And then that can add to function or dysfunction in your body. And so all those things together play out to whether you're going to get, let's say in this example, diabetes, but it really works for almost every condition. So our genes are not our destiny, right? And our diet and our lifestyle and our environment have strong influences on our genetics. So we actually have control, much more control than was ever believed before, to really be in control of our health and to make genes do what we want. So, again, our DNA is not our destiny. I'll say this over and over again, but you guys get it by now. So genes can predispose us or put us at risk for developing certain conditions. But there's so much we can do to make that more favorable. It's just, if my son who's 6 years old, if I give him a skateboard and I tell him to go out and go skating, he's at risk for breaking a bone. But if I teach him the skills of skateboarding and I have him wear a helmet and I teach him how not to go out in front of cars, then he actually has a more favorable outcome. So there's a risk, but then there's things you can do to avoid the risk or to make sure that it doesn't come true. And that's epigenetics. Epigenetics is all the things that we can do to minimize the risk and create a favorable outcome. Okay, so what is DNA? So let's talk about what DNA is. I'll give you some definitions and just so we can understand what we're talking about. So all of our cells have a set of instructions. This is our DNA. This determines how, when, and what extent our cells will follow these directions. So the DNA is the instructions for our cells. But if we choose to follow those directions, that's epigenetics. So if you ever, like I mentioned before, if you ever bake a cake, you're supposed to mix the wet ingredients together first and then the dry ingredients, and then you mix all of that together. And it's the order of the ingredients and how much you mix them and the temperature you bake it at that impacts how the cake comes out. So again, the DNA, that's the instructions, and then the cells can either follow those instructions and follow them in a fast way or a slow way. And so DNA, what it really is, it's chemical instructions for the cell. So it's deoxyribonucleic acid. So we just call it DNA for short because no one wants to say this. But whether our cells follow these instructions and how fast or slow they follow them and how strictly they follow them, that's up to our epigenetics. So is there a perfect recipe, right? Is there a perfect way for your genes to play out? There actually is one perfect way for each individual person, so like we used to say, what's the recipe for a little boy or a little girl? Remember that song, Sugar and Spice and Everything Nice? That's what little girls are made of. But the boys didn't get the nice stuff. The boys got the snakes and snails. But our genes are actually our recipe and they make us who we are. And some of us have a slightly different genetics. We have a pinch more of this or a pinch more of that. And that's called a variation in the genetics, or a SNP. And so we can have genetic variations that code for something more favorable, or we can have genetic variations that make us more susceptible to a certain condition or make us maybe process things slower or faster or need more support in certain areas. And the beauty of it is, if we understand where we need more support, where we need more help, then we can actually proactively provide that support for our body, and we never have to suffer the symptoms. So it's really cool little facts about genetics is that we actually share 98.6 to 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees. We share 98% of our DNA with gorillas, and we share 90% of our DNA with cats. So your little cute little cat and you are 90% similar DNA wise. So that's pretty funny. And then to totally blow your mind, the last slide, I didn't have put it on here, but we share 25% of our DNA with a banana. So that's really pretty funny. So those are just some little dinner conversations for you. But as I mentioned before, between human to human, 99.9% similar. It's only that 0.1% of our DNA. That's where the magic happens. That's within that 1% that makes us unique. There's a little bit of a debate whether it's 0.3 or 0.1, but you get the picture. It's a very small amount that we are similar. So let's talk about the differences. What's in that 0.1% or that 0.3%, whatever, that's a big number when it comes to genetics, but there's a lot of debate in the scientific community, but we're just going to say 0.1% for the purposes of this talk. So the differences are single nucleotide polymorphisms. They're called SNPs or SNPs. And this is it's a variation at a single position on your DNA strand. So you have the DNA strand that is sequenced, and you've seen DNA before, a picture of DNA. It's a double helix, double stranded kind of form. And so it's a position on that is different. And so basically, like I said, 99% is the same. So variations can actually influence our appearance, our disease susceptibility, our quality of life, our mood, our attitude, our predisposition, our hair color. And so all of these things are impacted by these variations. In some cases, these SNPs can lead to variations in the amino acid sequence, and they can also occur in non-coding regions of our DNA. So there's sometimes SNPs are associated with certain diseases, but you can actually use this information about your genetic variants to know what's the best way for you to eat, what's the best way for you to supplement. How should you be exercising? Are you more prone to injury? What's your optimal time to sleep? Like, we all have these general rules in the health and wellness space where we throw out get to bed by 10 p.m., but that's not right for everybody. Some people are delayed circadian rhythm and they actually would benefit by going to bed a little later. And some people have an earlier circadian rhythm and they would actually benefit by going to bed earlier. And so all of these little differences can actually help you fine tune your best path to wellness. And so that's super important. And it really makes you feel better, because if you're struggling to follow a certain diet, or you're struggling to feel good on the regular, the plan that everybody else is doing, there might be a reason why. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. It might be that the plan is not right for you. And you can find that out by understanding your DNA. So we talked about what genes are. So what is epigenetics? So epigenetics, the word actually means above or outside the genes. So what it actually refers to is external modifications to the DNA that can turn genes off and on, sort of like a light switch or a dimmer switch. So you can turn them off or on, or make them go faster or slower based on how the environment and our lifestyle interact with our genes. And like I said before, like every move we make, every bite we take, every thought we have, where we live, what we're exposed to, this can turn genes on and off over time and actually make the genes move faster or slower, make them express more or express less. And this is good. And sometimes making them express more is good, and sometimes making them express less is good, depending on what that gene codes for. But the ability to change or even reverse genetic expression through activity outside or around the genes themselves, that is epigenetics. And that's a powerful thing. That's why your DNA is not your destiny. This is why we have so much control and we can actually make our genes work for us. So this slide is a little bit sciencey, but basically what it's showing is that there is a feedback loop between our genes and our environment. So like I said before, our DNA codes for making proteins. So it's the recipe for making proteins. Epigenetics marks tell our RNA to use the recipe or not use the recipe. And then our RNA reads the DNA, like how a chef would read a recipe. And then the protein, the blocks build the cells, build your body. And then you interact with the environment. So you eat, you have stressors, you're exposed to EMFs, you drink water, you don't drink water, you sleep or you don't sleep, You might have some toxins in your environment. You might have some pharmaceuticals that you're taking. You might use herbs to help you. All of these things, all these inputs that go into your body, then those create instructions for the cells. The cells send those instructions back to the proteins and modify the ingredients to match your environment. And then the RNA and the proteins are epigenetically modified. And then your cells signal to modify those epigenetic marks, and it goes back in a loop. So it's a two-way street between our genes and our environment. And so we don't have control over the DNA, that code that we're born with, but we do have all the control in the world over our food, our exercise, our mindset, the air that we're breathing, the stress that we have, our relationships, how much our light exposure, toxins that we're taking in. We have a lot of control over that. And then we also have a lot of control over eating whole real foods, getting sleep, getting exercise, taking some herbs or supplements to support us in a smart way. So you don't want to just take a bunch of supplements because you heard it on, Dr. Oz, or that, you got an email and they're trying to sell you a supplement. You really want to strategically supplement per what your body needs. And that's going to give you the best ultimate outcome. So we can control our genetic expression, but we don't change our genes. So your genes always stay the same. So a lot of times I'll get a question, I took a DNA test a few years ago, when's a good time to take another one? Your DNA doesn't change. So as long as a DNA test was a good one, that's your DNA. That's the DNA that you're going to have from the day you're born to the day you die. But how your genes express, that's what changes. So you can see this little picture, the top part, fruits and vegetables, exercise, good moods, that's going to positively impact your genetics. Junk food, being lazy, playing video games, that's going to maybe negatively impact your genetic expression. So you have the option. And so this is by no means an inclusive list, but these are some of the things that will play a huge role in impacting your genetic expression. So diet, nutrition, sleep, exercise, the level of inflammation you have, personal relationships, social connections, spirituality, that has a big part of this as well. Your stress resilience, your connection to nature, all of these things are equally important. And again, I will tell you, your genes are not your destiny. Epigenetics is what controls the expression of your DNA. So in other words, it's what turns your genes on and off. So it's all the inputs, your environment and your nutrition, medications you're taking, everything you do, every bite you take, every move you make, every breath you have, every thought you make. This all acts on the body, and the response is that the DNA actually changes its expression, and it changes the proteins that your body makes. So what is this all about? Like, how do we do this? So one thing that we really have to drill down is that your genetics is about a propensity. It's not an absolute. So it's a probability. So if you have a gene that codes for obesity, you have the fatso gene. There's actually a gene called the fatso gene that makes the people who have that genetic variant more prone to gaining weight, storing fat than someone who does not have that genetic variant. Does that mean that every person who has the fatso gene is going to get fat? Absolutely not. It's not absolute. And the best way I can illustrate this is if I asked every one of you to, out of red, green, and purple, I'm going to put all these little balls into a bag, and I wanted you to guess what color ball I'll pull out. The majority of you, if you know how to gamble and play the odds, you'd probably pick red because you have 4 chances out of 7 for me to pull a red one out. You only have 2 chances out of 7 to pull a green one out, and you only have 1 chance out of 7 to pull a purple one out. So it's most likely that I would pull a red ball out of the bag if I had these 7 balls. It means I'm probably going to pull, more chances than not, I'm going to pull the red ball out. And so that's if you have a gene for, let's say you have a gene for the fatso gene, or you have a gene for depression, then you're more likely, if you do nothing to mitigate that, more likely you're going to have that happen if you have the environment. However, with epigenetics, you can actually stack the chips in your favor so that you can give yourself more If you wanted the green dot, you can put more green dots in the bag so you have more chances of pulling that one out. And that's how we use epigenetics to increase the probability and the possibility of having the outcome that we want. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that illustrates a little bit for you of how that you can actually have that benefit and make that change. Awesome. So another example is with bees, right? So I don't know if you guys know about queen bees, if you guys had the talk about the birds and the bees. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to be talking about making babies or sex, but we actually will be doing a hormone and fertility, hormone balance webinar in a couple of weeks. But today we're talking about genetics. So with bees, the queen bee and the worker bee have identical genetic material. However, because of the different diets that they eat, the evolution of those genetics is vastly different. So queen bees are surrounded by royal jelly. And so they basically float on a sea of this royal jelly. And that's what they eat to turn into the queen. And then the worker bees, they actually eat something that's called bee bread, I guess. It's like a fermented pollen. And that's how their genetics turn into being the worker bee, which is vastly different than the queen bee, even though they have the same DNA. What their environment is and what they're feeding their DNA is vastly different, and they come out looking very different. It's a different lifestyle to give them a different expression. So then the question is, what's your royal jelly? What do you need to give your DNA to be the most powerful, best version of yourself? And the truth is, it's different for everybody. So our genes actually hold the key and tell us exactly what type of diet, what type of movement, what type of sleep pattern, what type of supplementation, what type of hormone and digestive support we might need, what types of toxins we need to avoid, and what type of detox support that we need, so that we can really be our own queen bee. We can rule our own world and live the life we truly deserve if we can understand our genetics. And so this is what, if you do genetic tests, this is what your raw data looks like. It's a bunch of numbers and letters. And so, we have to basically, when we do genetic testing at Glow Natural Wellness, we get 740,000 lines of genetic data. And it can be like finding a needle in a haystack to pull out the genetic variants that you want to look at. And it takes a lot of research, but we've actually done that work for you so that you don't have to do that. But it can truly help you. So all this gumbly goop, all these letters and numbers, they have a huge amount of meaning for your health. So when you can extract the data that you need and you can combine it with knowledge, you can take action to get your result that you desire. So the genes are our data. Our environment and lifestyle is the knowledge to change our genetic expression. And then the genetic expression is the action. So that is really what we can do here with the knowledge that we have today. So what kind of information are we really looking for? There's plenty of genetic testing companies out there that will tell you like which toe is supposed to be longer, or whether you're likely to be the life of the party, or where you should go on your next vacation, or where your ancestors may have come from. But what we're looking for in the genetics is really useful information, like super useful information. And one of our clients, Jackie, she's a member of DNA Made Simple course, and she said that she thinks understanding her genetics is truly amazing. And basically she says it honestly saved her life. She didn't know she had numerous issues going on until she found out that her genetics suggested there could be a problem. And she looked into those areas with her doctor, and they sure will. And, basically she said the doctors before dismissed everything, but because she had the data from her DNA, she basically skirted autoimmune disease, and she caught a host of problems before they got worse into actual full-blown disease. So that's just a huge testament to like what you can actually accomplish when you understand your DNA. So everybody wants to know like how to eat, how to move, how to live in order to feel as amazing as possible and to avoid chronic life-threatening conditions. And what are some of the things that we can look at when we run genetics? We can look at so many things. And what we've done at Glow Natural, we've broken them up into specific areas of interest. So in nutrition, we can look at lactose, how you do with dairy, whether you're lactose intolerant, if you need carbs to burn fat. So how do you do with carbohydrates? Should you be avoiding them, or do you need to add them to burn belly fat? There is actually a large portion of the population that actually needs carbs to burn fat. And we've had many clients who actually were on keto diets and struggling, and then they learned that their genetics actually needs carbs to burn belly fat, and they added some carbs in, and they were able to lose the weight. Genetics can tell you whether you should choose coconut oil or olive oil, whether you should avoid gluten. It can help you decide what ratio of proteins versus fats versus carbs and what types of fats you should have. It can explain why you might have a low appetite or why you might be hungry all the time. You can understand what types of fats to eat to avoid cardiac issues and cognitive decline, specifically for people who are at risk for Alzheimer's. And then you can learn whether you have the fatso gene, the cookie jar gene, whether you have like that addiction where you can't turn off those cravings. You can understand what to do about that. And then also we have another gene that we call the no nut gene, people that don't do well when they eat nuts. And nuts are healthy, right? Every health expert will say nuts are a great source of proteins, fats, and fiber, and nuts are in so many healthy recipes. But for certain individuals, they're actually not healthy at all. And so Terry, she'd battled with weight all of her life. And even though she was extremely active, she could not drop the pounds. Her DNA test showed that she had the no nut gene and to stay away from dairy. She lost 38 pounds. And that's the only change that she and her daughter made because they had a lot of the same genetics. And so she was so excited to learn that information through her DNA test. And so, that's huge. If you can be on every diet in the world, and if you don't know that one thing, it can make a huge difference. So that's just some of the kind of breakthrough things you can learn. So for vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients, what type of B vitamins should you have? How do you convert vitamin A? Do you need a specific type? Can you make vitamin D from the sun? Sunshine vitamin D, some people actually don't have the genetics to convert vitamin D from the sun and turn it into vitamin D. And so those people need to supplement. Also knowing not only which supplements you might need, but also which supplements may cause inflammation for you. There are some, and there are actually a lot of people who in our program have actually learned these things and removed or altered the dose of those supplements, and they were able to reduce inflammation, get freedom from eczema. Some genetics will tell you if you can freely salt your food or whether you need to reduce salt intake for hypertension. And then also you can decide, understanding your genetics, what you can get from food and what you may also need to supplement with. So it's not about just putting all the supplements. It's about strategically supplementing, not giving your body too much of some stuff and not giving your body too little of others. And with micronutrients, with vitamins and minerals, DNA can code for how your body absorbs these, how your body actually converts them into the usable form, and how your body excretes them and how quickly it dumps them. So all of those things can make a huge difference in whether you need to add more or less. We can also look at sleep genetics. I mentioned this earlier. What's the best time for you to be awake, alert, and most productive? Are you a morning person or evening person genetically? I actually found out after many years of having a really hard time being, focused and awake early in the morning, I learned that I have what's called delayed phase sleep syndrome. And what that means is that my circadian clock genetically actually does better if I go to bed later and wake up later. And by my trying to force myself into the cultural standard of, going to bed at 10 p.m. and waking up at 6 a.m., that was actually causing me to not be able to balance my hormones. It was causing thyroid issues and digestive issues because all of our body clocks are closely tied together. And so knowing that about yourself, especially if you're trying to heal from something, can be huge. Also, our genetics can tell us how long it should take us to fall asleep once our head hits the pillow. It's called sleep latency. We can learn how to best prepare for sleep, whether melatonin will be beneficial for us or whether it'll make us groggy, if we're at risk for disrupted sleep, our narcolepsy risk, and our restless leg syndrome risk, among other things as well. So this is all super valuable information, especially if you're someone who has trouble sleeping or has never gotten restful sleep. The tweaks that you can learn from your DNA can make a world of difference. For detoxification, our genetics can uncover whether we have a mold sensitivity. I personally learned that I'm highly sensitive to mold and I'm not able to detox it. And so when I found myself in a moldy environment, I knew that there was nothing I would be able to do. I need to get myself out of that environment because my body's genetics just doesn't allow me to detox mold and I get more symptoms. You also will learn genetic risk for acquiring Lyme disease and having long haul Lyme disease, your histamine sensitivity, impact of mercury on your body, methylation, so your body's ability to methylate, also sulfation, acetylation, glutathione support, how you deal with chemical and environmental toxins, and how you deal with pharmaceuticals, how you deal with NSAIDs, alcohol, caffeine. All of these are super important for really individualizing your process and helping, even if you are under the care of a physician, helping to understand maybe why certain medications aren't working for you as they should. Some people don't convert them. Some people excrete them too fast, and some people actually use them up too quickly. And so knowing these things about yourself, and also not only just learning these things, but also learning how to impact your expression so that you can do better in these areas. Specifically, methylation is something that is one of the genes. The MTHFR gene is one of the more popular genes. You may have heard of it. A lot of people know that they have an MTHFR variant. So 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, that's MTHFR. It's an enzyme that plays a role in the metabolism of the vitamin folate. It also functions as a recycling enzyme for the active form of, the vitamin 5-MTHF, which is an active form of folic acid. It also plays a role in a lot of different biological processes, including homocysteine, also just the whole detoxification system. So an interesting thing about MTHFR, it's a variation. It's not necessarily a mutation. So the thing is, just because you have a variation in MTHFR doesn't mean you're doomed. It doesn't mean you can't detox. It's one of the most studied genes and one of the most blogged about genes, but it's really one of the most misunderstood genes. Now, it is a very important gene, a very important enzyme. It's responsible for over 200 different enzymatic reactions, but more importantly, these enzymatic actions occur over 1 billion times per second within our cells. So we're always methylating. If you do have variation in your MTHFR, it can cause risk for estrogen dominance, so hormonal imbalance, mood disorders, heart disease risk, blood clots. So it's really important to know this. But the good news is there's simple fixes for these genetic variants once you know you have them. Methylation is also linked to cancer, birth defects, effects of mood, mobilizing fats and cholesterol, so heart disease risk there. I talked about the hormone function already. But on a positive note, even a variation in the MTHFR gene, specifically the MTHFR 677 gene, even though you might have reduced processing of or breaking down of folic acid, it's actually protective against colon cancer. So there's a benefit to the variation. It's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing. So if you do have the variation, you just want to really focus on that and eat your greens and really look at the things that you can do to help yourself along, but you also have an advantage. So those are the things to recognize, that there's no bad genes. They're just different genes. And understanding that helps you to have a more positive outlook on your health, knowing that what makes you different is sometimes an evolutionary protective aspect, even with the fatso gene. I talked about the fatso gene earlier. People who have that, actually, it was an evolutionary kind of benefit back in the day when food was scarce. If you were able to store fat, you would live longer in times of starvation. So it's not necessarily a bad gene. It's just a gene that you may not want to have a variation in at the moment. But knowing those things actually helps you to do the things you need to do to get the expression that you want. We can also look at fitness and athletic performance genes. So we can learn if you're more apt to be a sprinter or you're more suited for endurance based on your muscle fibers. We can understand whether you need to do more cardio or more strength, what your muscle building capacity is, how much recovery time you need. So you may be someone that needs more or less recovery time in order to build muscle, to burn fat, to get more out of your fitness routine. We can look at your injury risk, what's the best way to exercise. And we really talk about how to use exercise more effectively by understanding our genes. Also, hormones, like our genetics and our hormones are like a two-way street. So we can actually understand our thyroid hormone production and conversion by looking at our DNA, our bone density risk, our estrogen metabolism and production, whether our estrogen is metabolizing more likely down a carcinogenic pathway or not. We can look at cortisol production, blood sugar balance, genetics, melatonin. And what this does is it really gives us clues to understand how to best support our hormone health. And it really helps us to understand our hormone testing in a more personalized light, because it gives us information as to why we might be seeing higher cortisol, or we might be seeing higher or lower TSH while we have normal thyroid hormone numbers. It helps us make sense of hormone testing. It helps us make sense of symptoms, and it really helps us to guide a more personalized approach to hormone balance for men and women. So it's not just for women. We also look at testosterone, how testosterone aromatizes into estrogen, how testosterone breaks down into DHT, which causes a lot of prostate issues, male pattern bald, for women, facial hair and acne. So these are all really important things for everybody. We can also look at neurotransmitters. So our billions of neurons exist in our brain, and they all need to work efficiently and appropriately. These cells share information with other nerves through electrical impulses. That's how our neurotransmitters communicate throughout the body. So neurotransmitters are important for having our heartbeat, having our stomach digest food, having our lungs breathe, but our neurotransmitters also play a big role in our mood as well. So how much serotonin and dopamine we make, our balance of different neurotransmitters, and understanding your genetics helps you to understand where the optimal levels of these neurotransmitters should be to support your brain health and your mood and your focus. Also, with genetics, we can look at immune, autoimmune, and inflammation. We can look at cellular inflammation potential. We can look at how well do your cells cleanse. We can look at maybe what types of pharmaceuticals or vaccines might cause a problem for you, whether you're prone to autoimmunity. Should you avoid certain supplements, certain foods? We can look at your detox potential and where you need detox support. So many different things. This is a huge category, and it really helps to uncover so many things. Just Jackie had mentioned earlier on that little testimonial that I had shared, how this panel on looking at the genes in this area actually helped to guide her doctor to open up a conversation and to do some further testing that helped to divert her down the pathway of disease. So super powerful. We can also, talk about the epigenetics of stress. In the beginning, we did a breathing exercise together, and we can proactively change the way our genes express through the alteration of our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs. So, we really put a lot of weight on daily intentions, on meditation, kindness, gratitude. In naturopathic medicine, we have the foundations of health. And, we talk about diet, we talk about exercise, we talk about toxin reduction, we talk about relationships, we talk about sleep, but we also talk about the whole stress reduction area and the being proactive about stress. And that has a huge impact on your genetics. So a lot of times people ask me like, Dr. Michelle, what supplement should I take for this? Or what, I have this genetic variant, what supplement should I take? And it's not always just about the supplement. In fact, I really think that you should not treat your genes. You should take into account your epigenetics. And really that's what sets what we do here at Glow Natural Wellness apart from all the other genetic testing and genetic education offerings, is because no one's taking into account the epigenetics. And so I think that is a huge part of it. So I think that I should just skip the gun here, but so is all genetic testing the same? There's actually a lot of different genetic testing out there. I want to share with you the difference between medical genetic testing and lifestyle genetic testing. So in conventional medicine, or even in naturopathic medicine, genes can be tested normally in blood to determine your compatibility for certain medications or to diagnose a mutation or a birth defect. So most medical genetic testing also requires that you meet with a genetic counselor to go over the pros and cons of learning your risks. Insurance sometimes pays for medical genetic testing. Medical genetic testing typically will look at one or two genes or a small collection of genes, and it can cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars. Lifestyle genetics, we're not looking at one single gene. We're looking at a collection of genetic variants that can influence chronic disease and quality of life. We don't focus on mutations or things that you cannot change. However, you will have the raw data where you can look up genes to see if you have a mutation in a certain area. We don't highlight those in lifestyle optimization testing. What we're highlighting is the genetic variations that you can actually do something with. Because the truth is, not everybody wants to know if they have a genetic mutation, and not everybody wants to know things that they can't change. But lifestyle genetic testing, you can actually look at thousands of genes at the same time, and you can get the data that you need to influence your genetic expression. Let me see. Someone just asked a question. So will DNA with mutated cancer genes be reported on the DNA test? So you're going to only be getting the DNA that you were born with. You will get 740,000 lines of genetic data, but we do not cover DNA mutations. We cover genetic variants that can influence your lifestyle. And I'll talk about more about that in a minute, but I just wanted to share. But would it be beneficial for a cancer patient to do a DNA test? Absolutely, because there's so many genetic variants that we look at in detoxification, in inflammation, and hormones, in sleep, in nutrition, that can help to support your body in healing from cancer. So I think it's hugely important. So just some differences in what we do at Glow Natural Wellness versus some of the major direct-to-consumer testing. 23andMe is probably the most popular. Their main focus is on ancestry and also on accumulating data that they can sell to pharmaceutical companies. So there's a lot of privacy issues with 23andMe. And their testing is pretty extensive. They cover about 600,000 variants in your raw data. They don't report on all of those, but that's what you get when you get your raw data report from them, all the numbers and the letters. It's a spit test, so it's actually difficult for some people to do because you have to get quite a bit of spit to get into their little container. And the results that they give you in the report are based on single genes. So they don't actually look at genes in a category, like your carbohydrate sensitivity genes, for instance. So we look at a bunch of genes for that category. And then we also look at what's actually happening in your life and how you feel and what your epigenetic expression is. And 23andMe and all the other genetic companies out there that are doing genetic reports, they're not looking at epigenetics. So our genetic test, it looks like this. It's a cheek swab test, so it's real easy to do. It has a little Q-tip. You do a little Q-tip test. You just do it inside your mouth, like how if you ever watch a crime investigation show, they swab the mouth for DNA. That's what it is. We are very protective of your privacy. We only use a barcode to identify you. So if you were to do a DNA test through us, the lab will ship you a kit. It'll have a barcode. When you send your DNA sample back to our lab in San Diego, that you're only identified by a barcode. So they don't know who you are. And then when we get the data back, we erase it after 3 months. The reason why we keep it we can erase it earlier too, but the reason why we keep it for 3 months is if you lose it or you don't know what to do with it, or you can't find it on your computer, then we're able to send it to you. Your ID though, your identification of who you are and your genetic data is stored completely independently. So even if our computers were to get hacked, our stuff is all double encrypted anyway, but even if somehow someone was able to put it together, they'd only have your barcode, so they wouldn't know who you are. We never sell data. We are in the business of health. I'm a physician. So if you do a blood test or hormone test through me, it's HIPAA compliant, it's protected, and we never sell information. We're not in the business of trying to make money off of data. We're in the business of trying to help people understand their health. And our lab that actually does the analysis is US based. They're in San Diego. They're CLIA certified, CAP accredited, and HIPAA compliant. So total safety and total transparency. So this simple genetic test, that's what the cheek swab looks like. It can make a huge difference. When we think about chronic diseases, the majority of chronic disease are the main causes of death in most Western countries are largely preventable and reversible through lifestyle. Most people would agree with that. But when you understand exactly what the right lifestyle choices are for you, it puts you ahead of the game. So, we know that eating right and exercising is what helps you to be healthier. But how should you eat right? What's the right way to eat for you? What's the right way to exercise for you? How much sleep do you need? What do you need to supplement with? When you have that data, it helps you to fast track your health. It helps you to fast track your ability to avoid chronic disease like lung cancer, like kidney disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, breast cancer, colon cancer, lung disease, osteoporosis, arthritis, all of these conditions, heart disease, all of these conditions are reversible through lifestyle if you know the right lifestyle choices to make. So a lot of direct-to-consumer testing that you'll get out there will unfortunately encourage supplements. So they'll try to sell you supplements for every gene. And you should never, ever treat your genes. You should use your genetics as part of the exploration of what to do about your health. So we, in our DNA Made Simple program, so we have our genetic test. That's part of it. You'll get reports that are color-coded and tell you what your genes mean, but we don't recommend you just take that report and run with it. We also have interactive workshops that go gene by gene explaining what they mean. And we have self-assessments so that you can actually understand where you're at epigenetically. And that information together, that's what's going to give you the plan of what to do. We also don't include fun facts. We don't talk about whether you're, a party animal or whether you have, your ears shaped differently. We don't do any of that. And a lot of the tests are ambiguous. They only look at one gene in an area, and that is not going to give you enough information. There's no interpretation. There's no Q&A. There's no coaches to help you. And epigenetics, like I mentioned, is completely ignored. And when they look at one gene in a category and they assign a risk to that one gene, it can put you down the wrong path. Because if we're looking at 10 different genes for histamine intolerance, and you have one that says that you might be more susceptible, but then you have 9 that say it's not a problem for you, then 9 out of 10, that's pretty much saying that you probably don't have a problem in that area. But another test might only look at that one gene where you had a variant that made you more predisposed to a problem, might send you down a wild goose chase that you don't need to be on. So we take a more holistic approach. We look at your genetics, but we also look at epigenetic modulation. So we look at diet, social interactions, drugs, your microbiome, your exercise, all of the things that go into impacting your genetics. And that's really where the magic happens. So when you understand your genes, you will have control of your own health. So if you found this interesting and you'd like me to share how you can get all this data for yourself, and what we designed for you. Let me know in the chat if you want to know a little more about this, and I'd love to show it for you. No, we don't have any New York State restrictions. We actually can ship this all over the world. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So if you use, so someone mentioned, can they do our DNA program with 23andMe or Ancestry.com data? You absolutely can, but because they pull less genetic data in those tests, you might be missing a few genes in different categories. So for instance, in the example I gave you with histamine, if we look at 10 genes, maybe they only looked at 5. And so you may only have, you might be missing some of the data, but we actually made it super affordable to do our tests. So I'll explain to you a little bit about this. So we put it all together into, thank you, I will explain it a little more. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about it right now. You don't have to send me your email because I'm going to tell you everything right now. I'm going to do it fairly quickly. So DNA Made Simple. This is testing and interpretation all together. I like to give people information. I am an educator. So naturopathic physicians, a doctor is to teach. And so I think it's super important for you to understand why you're doing something. If you're following a plan or you're changing the way you live your life, it's super important for you to understand why, so that you know when you need to adjust things. And so we look at nutrition and weight loss. We look at supplementation, sleep, hormones, methylation, immune, autoimmunity, inflammation, fitness and injury risk, cardiometabolic health, brain health, and GI health. So we look at all of those areas, and our reports are extensive. We look at over 100 genes per report, and we don't just look at like little obscure genes. What I found on 23andMe in particular is they will report on the gene. So if I did a 23andMe report and I look up the genes they're reporting on, they're telling me that my genetics means one thing, but then if I look at the research study only applied to Chinese men. And so being that I'm not a Chinese man, that data is incorrect for me. And so we only use data that is solid research and that applies to you. So our approach is to look at genetics and epigenetics and combine that together to create the best possible approach for you. So we have our DNA test, and then inside our portal that you'll get access to, we have lifestyle assessments, questionnaires, and interactive trainings. We talk about nutrition strategies, sleep optimization, fitness, stress reduction, supplementation, herbs, all the lifestyle strategies that you can use to exchange your genetic expression. And then we also will tell you when it's appropriate to maybe look a little deeper in that area, get some functional medicine testing, ask your doctor for testing in a certain area, because sometimes your genes will uncover points where you might need further investigation. And that's awesome that you have that information to go with. And so we do take epigenetic factors into account by how we do that is we have health and lifestyle questionnaires. And so we don't only want to know if you have genetics that show that you may have issues with your blood sugar. We also want to know, do you have issues with your blood sugar? Do you have symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation? And so if you have the genes and you have the symptoms, then you need to do the intervention to help you. And then we also offer coaching. So we have a team of coaches that helps you to put it together. And so basically I've broken it down in these modules. It's very detailed, and I break everything down to make it easy to understand. We have handouts. It's all there for you. However, there's always a question, right? You always might have a question. You might want to know you're on the right track, and we're there to help you. And I think that is really unique about pretty much every one of our programs. So here's how you do it. Step 1, you test your genes. It's a simple cheek swab. So again, this is, I don't know if you can see this, but inside here, I guess I'll open it. Inside here, there is a little cotton swab. You're going to rub that inside your cheeks. And then what you're going to do is we give you this little vial that has a barcode on it. You break this off in there. You send this in the little package back to the lab in the self-addressed envelope that we send you, and then you're off. And then a few weeks later, you'll get your raw data. And inside our portal, you'll already start learning about your genetics, and you'll be able to upload your data and create your full color reports. which is really cool. Again, we do not share your genetic data. You're only identified by a barcode. So it's super, super safe. All of our software is double encrypted. We have all the latest firewalls. So it's super safe. So you're going to get raw data, which looks like on the left here, where it's super confusing and doesn't mean anything to you. But then we actually pull it out and put it into a report. And this is just a little snapshot of carbohydrates. So we tell you what your genotype is. So that's you. And then what the risk is, but we color code it. So for instance, green means no risk. Yellow means you have one risk. And then red, which isn't on here. And then afterward, I couldn't fit it on the slide, but then we give you a written explanation of what it means. And then inside the course, you actually have modules that you go step by step. So you will follow along with your report. You'll ask questions. You'll determine which genes are expressing, and we'll understand, we'll tell you what lifestyle practices to put in place. So you can start right away, and then you can go through all the different modules, and we will give you the handouts, we'll give you all the information, and then you can get additional support from our Glow coaches as well to help you through it. So in module 1, we just talk about understanding DNA. So you could start with this right away. So you have an overview of how to get started right away, and simple things you can do to impact your genetics while you're waiting for your test back. Then we're going to talk about nutrition and weight loss genetics. So things that we cover in here are hunger and satiety, emotional eating, addictive eating. Do you have the cookie jar gene? We look at if you're at higher risk for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and Alzheimer's, and what you can do nutritionally to prevent those. We look at whether or not you need carbs to burn fat. Do you have the no nut gene? What's the best type of oil for you? We look at dairy, we look at gluten, even grains. Like some people for grains will cause insomnia and anxiety because of the GAD genes. We look at increasing your metabolism, what types of things will do that. And should you do keto, high fat, low carb, vegan, or something else? What's the best type of diet for you? So that's in module 1. This is just a case study. I won't spend too much time on it because it looks like I'm already going over. But Dora had high cholesterol. She had trouble sleeping. She had carrying around extra weight. And she really felt like she could just eat all day, and she never, ever felt full. She was dealing with side effects from taking statins and other cholesterol medications. And she had a family history of heart disease. She was on diet to diet. She was currently trying to do a keto diet, drinking bulletproof coffee in the morning, intermittent fasting, and she was doing this to lose weight. And we discovered that she had a variant in her MTHFR gene that was causing decreased dopamine, and that she had some other hunger genetics and satiety genetics that were causing her to be hungry all day. So based on those genetics, we actually added one simple supplement called mecunopurins to help with her dopamine. And that alone, for the first time in her life, she actually felt satisfied after eating a meal. We also saw that her APOE genes were putting her at a higher risk for Alzheimer's and heart disease. And so we actually changed her keto diet and reduced her saturated fats down to just 6%. We increased her monounsaturated fats. So we gave her more olive oil, more avocados. We removed dairy because she had the no dairy genes, and that was actually causing a lot of weight gain for her. So after 3 months, her cholesterol was reduced by 200 points, and she no longer felt healthy or hungry all the time, which is quite amazing. That's an extreme case, but basically the cholesterol medications, the statins, weren't helping her. But once we were able to look at her genetics, we actually reversed her risk of cardiovascular disease. We helped her to actually feel full for the first time in her life. And we reduced her overall risk of mortality hugely by sending her down this path, just by making some changes. And this is just on the nutrition report. This is before she got to any of the other modules. So that's quite amazing. We look at supplementation and micronutrient genetics. The average person that comes to work with us at our clinic shows up on at least 15 different supplements. And some people are taking as much as 40 different supplements. I always ask them, like, why are you taking all these supplements? And a lot of times they'll say, because, I read that this was good for this. And one other nutritionist told me that this was good. And I read a blog and I got an advertisement. And the truth is that some of these supplements are good for some people, but just like diet, supplementation is really unique to each individual. And so understanding what it is you actually need and what you shouldn't have and what you don't really need can make a huge difference in your budget, right? These supplements are not cheap and can also make a difference in your level of inflammation and how you feel and your disease risk. So we look at absorption, how you absorb specific nutrients from your food. We look at how you convert the nutrients into a usable form, whether you excrete nutrients too quickly, and whether a nutrient can be toxic or inflammatory to you. So we're really looking at what's the best form of the nutrient to take, how much you need to take. And really we want to emphasize food as medicine first. And sometimes based on your genetics, you might need a little help in some areas. And so we help you do that in a way so you know what you need and what you need to stay away from and what you can get from food. Then we look at immune, autoimmune, and inflammation genetics. This is huge, especially right now with everything going on with COVID and the vaccines. This can be super important to help you understand what is your cellular inflammation potential, how well your cells cleanse, things that might stimulate your inflammation, people who sometimes can't turn their immune system off. We can look at how well you detox. Should you stay away from certain things and why? And so this is huge. It's a very important module here and really is eye-opening for so many people. Autoimmune risk in general can really help to drive treatment factors and help people to get their doctors to do tests that they might not have done before, or really help you to understand like why it's really time to make certain changes in your life. Then we have sleep genetics is huge and so important. Most people know, like you might know I'm a night person or a morning person, but about 30% of the people we work with actually have that wrong. They think they're a morning person or they think they're a night person because they've trained their body to do that. But actually just by shifting bedtime and wake time, you can actually dramatically make changes in your blood sugar, your hormone balance, your hunger, and so many things like learning when you're most productive, when you should do your harder tasks, how fast you should be falling asleep, and things you can do to impact that so you can get better sleep, less disrupted sleep. And really, we give you a lot of strategies as well to improve your sleep based on your DNA. Hormones is a huge topic. I love talking about hormones. Hormone genetics is something that a lot of people don't talk about. So we look at thyroid hormones. So whether you have a propensity for increased or decreased TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, T3, which is your active thyroid hormone, or T4, which is the most abundant thyroid hormone in the body. It's more of the inactive form. This helps us make better sense of your blood tests. I did have one client who genetically had decreased TSH, so her doctor actually wasn't running the whole thyroid panel. He's like, your thyroid's fine, your TSH is in a good range, but she had all the symptoms of having a thyroid dysfunction. So of course, we ran her full panel and her TSH was normal, but her T4 and her T3 were low because she just genetically had a lower TSH. And so conversely, you can actually have high TSH and normal thyroid levels. And so it's really important to understand genetically the variances, because when we look at ranges on blood tests, we look at what the range are supposed to be, but for certain people, that range isn't what they actually need because they're individual. The range is the average. And so I actually had one client who actually needed more T3, actually put her at the top of the normal range. She needed to be at the way top of that range in order to feel good. And her doctor wasn't giving her anymore because she was in the middle of the range, but she still had the symptoms. So looking at her thyroid genetics, we saw that she actually should have a higher T3 number. And so we were able to actually help her there, show that information to her doctor and get that prescription changed. And then we also look at things like brain hypothyroidism. Yes, it is a thing, and autoimmune thyroid risk as well. We look at melatonin and cortisol. So your production, your response, and your breakdown to these waking and sleeping hormones. But melatonin, so much more important than just sleep. It's also anti-cancer. It's an immune booster. It helps with digestion. Cortisol, not just for stress, it also helps with waking you up in the morning. So they're both very important, but they both need to balance. And also cortisol, thyroid, and insulin, These are our primary hormones. So when those are not in balance, then our progesterone or estrogen and our testosterone are going to be out of balance as well. So we really need to look at these hormones. Estrogen, we can look at your estrogen receptor response and metabolism. This is super important to mitigate cancer and also to mitigate estrogen dominance. So we can actually know what tweaks we need to make to help your body more healthfully metabolize estrogen. And then testosterone. So testosterone is important for both men and women. Sex hormone binding globulin levels, luteinizing hormone, and metabolites like DHT and conversion of testosterone to estrogen are all important for both men and women. And this information, your DNA can help guide hormone balancing protocols, whether they be natural, bioidentical hormones, or even just lifestyle hormone balance. So super important information. Also, we can get information on bone density. So how your bones mineralize, how your body handles vitamin D and vitamin K, how your estrogen and testosterone aromatize and break down. These are all super important, especially for women, but also for men. As we get later in life, hip fracture risk and bone breakage is one of the leading causes of death actually in women. So super important. And also with estrogen, heart disease risk, brain fog, those are all important as well. We look at all of that. Excuse me. Then the next module is detoxification. So important. In the detoxification module, we look at estrogen metabolism again, but how it detoxifies. We look at how well you detoxify medications, anesthetics, over-the-counter medications. We look at your mitochondrial activity, your mold sensitivity, your histamine tolerance, Lyme disease risk, glutathione production and transfer, methylation, acetylation, sulfation, I didn't put that on there, mercury, environmental toxins and pollution, how you handle those. These are all super important. When you look at your overall health, your toxic burden has impact on every area of your health, your brain health, your hormonal health, your skin health, your sex life, your mood, right? So this module alone can make a huge difference in your health. And then we have fitness and exercise. So this not only has to do with what type of exercise will get you fittest, but it also explains what exercises might be harder for you and which areas you might want to work on. And also, where are you more susceptible to injury? Like what should you spend more time warming up or stretching out? How much time should you take to recover? And what's the best way to train to boost your overall health? So this is important as well. And then we have cardiometabolic and heart health genetics. This is our most recent module that we've released. This is where we learn about hypertension, high blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, fibrinogen and blood clot risk, lipoprotein A and heart attack risk, C-reactive protein, inflammation, and the anti-vegetarian gene. We also include self-assessments and access to the most advanced cardiometabolic testing around. This module is a huge resource for anybody who has heart disease risk in their family, and for anyone who's interested in understanding what their DNA says about their heart health. But it also dispels a lot of myths out there about hypertension, about cholesterol, about triglycerides. So it gives you real understanding of how to impact those in your health and what your numbers really mean. The value of that, if you were to buy each of the reports separately, that's an $1,147 value. Don't worry, we're not going to charge you that. And then all the modules, they're all valued at over $250. That's actually a modest thing because there's so many lessons and it really is in-depth training. So all the modules, I won't read them all to you. We just talked about them all. Oh, and then you also get your digital portal. So everything's housed very nicely. And you get to ask questions. So we have our coaching staff. So here is like what the value of it is. Of course, you're not going to pay over $4,000, but we put it all together and we give you access to our coaches for questions and support. And the price is only $497. And we also have a payment plan to make it easier for you to put in your budget. And then we also include all the updates, of course, that we make. So it's not like per month, it's one time. You get your test, you do your test, you send it back, you get your data, and you get all the reports and all of the information and the access to our coaches. So I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions right now. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions right now, and then I'm going to share with you. But before I do that, I'm just going to skip right here. So how you join is you can go to glownaturalwellness.com/DNA, glownaturalwellness.com/join DNA Made Simple. You'll see this page. And then you'll see that the value, there'll be a yellow button that says, yes, give me access to DNA Made Simple. And you can also see that you can do payments. So you do 3 payments of $189. You're still going to get everything, but we're just trying to break it up for you to make it a little easier on your budget. Also, if you have done 23andMe or Ancestry.com, you can use that data if you have your raw data, and they should have sent it to you. And then we won't send you the test kit. We won't send this to you because we're just going to you'll have to upload that raw data to our system. I know that there's a question, I'll answer that right now. What if you do that and you're missing some genes? You're still going to get a huge amount of benefit. You're still going to get the majority of the genes. Yes, we do cover more genes with our Glow Natural Wellness offer, but you can save $100. And so I think if it was me and I wanted to take advantage of the 23andMe that I already did and use that data, I'm still going to get the majority of the information. So it's $100 that you save. So if you do that, then you just enter the code 23andMe. Even if you're using Ancestry, we only have one code. The code 20, excuse me, I got a little cough. The code 23andMe just means that you're using your own data. We won't send you a kit, but you'll get access to everything else. Let's see, is there one-on-one coaching based on my individual genetics? So there is, we do have coaches available if you want to book individual sessions. There's an extra charge if you want to do one-on-one coaching, but that isn't available. However, if you have questions, you can always just send your question in and one of our coaches will get back to you with a detailed response and help you to understand it. So you can get more advanced coaching, like more one-on-one in-depth coaching, but with the price of admission, you're going to get access to ask questions. Do I need to watch all the workshops within a certain time? No. So you have lifetime access to this. So you can I recommend going through and working on a little bit at a time. So perhaps like you're most interested in weight loss. So start with the nutrition and weight loss genetics and go through, and you can I broke it up into every section has its own lesson. So I broke it up into little sections and you can just go through and maybe just learn about gluten and just deal with that for today. And then and you can also look at your reports that are color coded. And if you see a section that has a lot of red, that means you have a lot of risk variance, and you can read the notes next to it to see what they mean. And maybe that's the section you want to look at first. And so there's no rush. I don't recommend that you plow through all the information and try to implement everything all at once, because that can be difficult. I recommend that you take your time with it. Are there any additional costs? There's no additional costs other than if you want to, change your diet, you want to, add turmeric supplement or alpha-lipoic acid or something based on your genetics, those will be costs. But from us, it includes the kit, it includes the genetic analysis, it includes all the reports, it includes all the training. So you have lifetime access. Yeah, so it's HSA approved. So if you have a health savings account or a flexible spending account, you can use that debit card to purchase this. And if for some reason, when you go to glownaturalwellness.com/join DNA Made Simple, and you click on that yellow button and maybe your HSA card doesn't work, you can email us at support@glownaturalwellness.com. And we will send you a separate invoice from our clinic, and then that can get approved. Let's see, if somebody already has heart disease and has been on statins since 30 plus years, will this help? Absolutely. No matter what your current situation is, there's always things you can improve about your health. There's always something you can work on. There's always a little tip you can have that's going to drastically improve your health over time. Even just that little mini breathing exercise that we did in the very beginning, if you take nothing else away from this training today, that will impact your genetics. If we want to get extra tests for our spouse and children, can we get those? I believe we do have a family plan. We did at one time. So just email in to support. Oh, Tara, I know you. Hey, Tara. So Tara is one of our Glow Protocol members. Email support@glownaturalwellness.com. And Jeff will work something out with you if you're buying multiple tests. What is the full email address? It was covered. Okay, so support, I'm going to put it in the chat so you have that. Okay. Oh, with the, I said I'm going to put the web address. So Glow Natural. Oh, you're covered by my picture, huh? glownaturalwellness.com/join DNA Made Simple. The program's called DNA Made Simple. So that is that. And then, so I put that in the chat. And then also, if you have questions, like beyond what I'm answering here, you can do support@glownaturalwellness.com. That is our team is on hand to answer any of your questions. If you're already in the Glow protocol, this is a great, the Glow protocol is our at-home natural medicine implementation program. And that has all of our protocols for healing different areas of your body. So this is a great layer on process to personalize that even more. So yeah, I think it's a great way to more further understand your health. Just like any functional medicine test gives you more insight, DNA, and you only have to do this test once. So that was another question, like, when do I need to do the test again? No, your DNA stays the same. So the DNA you have right now is a DNA you were born with. What we're acting on, what we're changing is your genetic expression. Okay, so there's a couple of people that put their emails in. So we will go ahead. I'll have my team email you the information, the sales page here. And then also, I didn't show you the whole page, but when you go to glownaturalwellness.com/join DNA Made Simple, there's a lot more information on there. I know I went fast tonight, but it breaks down every single module. It really explains why you'd want to do this and really helps so much. So let's see, what about the microbiome in your mouth? Well, no. So it doesn't matter if you have microbiome. This is actually just testing your DNA. So microbes won't impact it. If you have a health condition, it won't impact it. If you're taking a medication, it will not impact it. If you're taking a ton of supplements, your DNA will still be the DNA you were born with. Even once you implement the changes that we're going to tell you to implement, you will still have the same DNA. It will just be expressing differently. So hopefully I know it's a hard concept to understand. I didn't understand it for a really long time, but you're not ever changing the genes you were born with. If you have a gene, you're always going to have that gene, but you can turn it on, turn it off, turn it up, turn it down, make it dimmer, make it lighter, as you can change what it actually does in your body. Awesome. So I think I answered most of the questions. I'm going to go over in the chat and make sure that I don't have, let's see. I do have a couple questions in the chat. Let's see. Yeah. So is this available outside of the United States? Yes. So it is available outside of the United States. The only difference for international customers is we will not ship you a prepaid return label, because we don't know what the charge is to ship. So you're responsible for the cost to ship your genetic test to the lab. Whatever that cost is, that's not covered. But if you're in the United States, it's all included. We ship the test to you, then you ship the test. When you ship the test back, that's prepaid. So hopefully that makes sense. And my goal, first and foremost, is to educate you and to give you some information. And whether or not you choose to work with us or you're going to use another company to understand your DNA, that's not even a big deal to me. I really just want you to be empowered. I want you to walk away today knowing that you have the power to control your genetic expression. You have the power to overcome any chronic disease, and you can actually find that best path, the fastest path, the most optimal path, because there's many ways to heal. Like, we all know that there's many ways to heal. There's many different diets, there's many supplements, but there's only one best one for each of us. And they might look different. My best path might be different than your best path, because we don't look exactly the same. We don't sound exactly the same. We don't have all the same physiology going on. And so everybody has the right best path. And we're really just trying to help you find that to make your life happier, longer, healthier, and more enjoyable. So thank you guys all so much for being here today. I really appreciate seeing you guys all here, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope to see you in DNA Made Simple. We do love seeing people come in and really make a difference. And, I love seeing those testimonials come in and people are finally understanding the key to, overcoming their biggest struggles. And it's just it makes me feel so good. So anyway, thank you so much. I will see you guys either in the program or on Facebook or wherever we encounter you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.